If you've listened to our episodes on Middle Ages music, it's time to move forward to the next era in Western tonal music. That would be the Renaissance period. You're listening to Music Student 101. And now, your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips.
Welcome back to Music Student 101.
Welcome back.
I'm Jeremy Burns.
I am Matthew Scott Phillips.
We are here today to do another music history episode.
Indeed we are.
And maybe we clarify that we try and share history within the episodes we do.
Yes.
But this is definitely the place to go for your history, for your music history. Now, we've done episodes on genres, blues, women in music, and stuff like that.
And there's some historical aspect to those episodes.
But these are meant to be in sequence, and we're about to get into it in a little bit. But first, let us have our social section, shall we?
Let's indeed.
All right, we got ourselves a new review.
A new review, yay.
And we got 5 stars from Paul Cueva.
Yes.
Who says, "What a treasure. I've been going through the backlogs of this series, and it has been an amazing learning experience. My understanding of music theory and terms have improved immeasurably. Thank you, y'all rock."
Oh, thank you, Paul. We appreciate the positive support.
And he said, y'all, he's speaking in our language.
Yeah, y'all. And even used it properly, too.
He did. Yeah, well done. Spelled it
second
properly.
person plural.
Uh-huh. So thank you. If you want to help us out, you can leave your reviews on whatever listening platform you have that you listen to us on. Mm-hmm. And it helps to spread the word and boost people's confidence when they want to check out our podcast, whether or not it be a good podcast. Yeah?
Indeed.
So anyways, let us move on. We have a new Patreon patron.
A new Patreon patron?
Yeah, this is Attila Fust of Cape Breton, Canada.
Wonderful.
You know, Cape Breton has a pretty strong musical presence. Are you familiar with Cape Breton?
I am not.
It's an island off of Nova Scotia, so there's a lot of Gaelic influence.
Yeah, okay.
But also French Acadian and also indigenous influences.
Oh, wow.
The French Acadian, according to Attila, are the cousins to our Cajuns who ended up north.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, and I remember just like, I used to go to those Irish sessions a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember one Sunday, there's all this scuttlebutt about a Cape Breton fiddler that was going to come over. And apparently that's where some of the greatest fiddlers come from, but I didn't know that. And I was like, okay, all right.
Okay.
And then they show up, and I'm like, cool. And then they start playing, and I was like, okay.
Oh, now we see what the fuss is about.
Yeah. But anyway, back to Attila. Attila began playing guitar in his 55th year, so he feels he has some catching up to do.
Congratulations.
And I say it's never too late to pick up an instrument.
No, it is not. It is never too late.
He says he wanted to know about music beyond printouts of chord charts, which brought him to us.
Oh, wow.
What does Attila have to say, Matt?
So Attila says, "You two have opened my eyes to many new and wonderful things in the world of music, so I would like to return the favor. I watched a music doc yesterday titled Rumble, The Indians Who Rocked the World, from 2017, which lays out the case that indigenous music is the origin of blues. In your own music podcast series on the blues, the two of you make the strong case that blues came out of the ills and hardships of slavery, which no doubt had an influence. The documentary lays strong evidence that indigenous music is a precursor to the blues." Fascinating.
Isn't it, though? So apparently Charlie Patton, who we talked about as one of the early blues fathers,
Yes.
Was of Cherokee ancestry. And in the late 1800s, the feds banned the Native Americans from using drums for communication purposes, but also for music. That sounds like something they would do.
Oh, yeah.
And Charlie Patton drummed on his guitar to compensate. So he would, and you can hear this in Down the Dirt Road Blues.
Yeah.
He's actually playing his guitar, but then he'll take a few moments to go boom, 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 just kind of bang on with his hands.
Yeah.
And that technique has been more widely accepted today, you know?
Sure.
But I think that's interesting. I didn't see the documentary, but I intend to. But this is just what Attila was telling me about.
Yeah, I'd be willing to check it out. That's flying in the face of some pretty strong, cemented music history wisdom at this point. But, I mean, you know, sometimes the history books just get rewritten, so who knows?
I'd be curious to see their angle on it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I would be curious, too, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for telling us about that, Attila, and thank you so much for your Patreon patronage.
Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate everything.
If you want to support us on Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/musicstudent101.
And check out our 3 tiers of membership where you get increasingly cool stuff.
Exactly. But there's other ways to support us. If you want to do just a one-time donation, you can go to the PayPal link on our website, musicstudent101.
Absolutely.
Go to the donations page.
Absolutely.
And
or you can leave us a review.
Which
also helps.
It does, more than you know. Okay, so we want to thank you again, Attila, and we shall move on now to what would be listener mail, but I just have 2 quick little things.
Okay.
In the interest of getting the show on the road. We did have some return feedback from Stephen May, who voted in for the big recap episode that we just did.
Okay, yeah.
And he followed up with his approval, and he also said, I got a kick out of Matt's bafflement at why you had discussed the topics of hexatonic scales. Thanks for keeping that in. I guess I thought about editing that out, but I just thought it was pretty hilarious because you were like, what? Why did we do that?
I am still baffled, Stephen. Just so you know, like a month later, I am still quite baffled at why we ever talked about it. Like why? Like what? Okay,
because they're hexatonic.
I mean, it's a thing,
and they're beautiful.
Because they deserve our love.
Uh-huh. And then also we had a listener, Brandon, who was asking if we take interns.
You are not the first person to ask that question, Brandon.
That's the first I've heard of it.
Longtime listener, former student of mine, and great friend of this show, Emily Zhang.
Oh, we love Emily.
Yes, also broached that question at one point.
Uh-huh.
And, yeah, short of making us coffee before every episode, I don't know what the interns...
It's a very small operation. It is just me and Matt. And
yeah, it's a pretty bare bones. But hey, we will absolutely, you know, if it gets bigger, we will absolutely keep both of you in mind.
You can all help us get bigger by spreading the word, and then maybe we can afford an intern one day.
Absolutely, yeah. And Emily is on her way off to graduate studies now. Congratulations, Emily. So you may be first in line, Brandon. We will keep your name in the pot.
Indeed. Emily, I saw her recently at a formal event.
Did you now?
What was this formal event that I saw her at, Matt?
What makes you think I know? No, I do know. I do know, actually. I got married last week.
Matt got married.
I'm a taken man.
Yeah. Sorry, ladies.
Sorry, ladies. Right. Sorry to my wife. She now has to put up with me.
Yeah.
For time eternal.
Well, we talked recently about how we don't want to talk about a bunch of personal stuff, but I think this certainly is something worth mentioning.
Yeah, we can. Since she does listen to the podcast, I think I'm probably advised to bring it up. No, my beautiful fiance and I did get married last week. Jeremy was in attendance. Was one of my groomsmen, in fact.
Feeling good, looking good.
Yeah, it was a beautiful, lovely day, and then we went and spent a few days in New Orleans for our honeymoon, hanging out in the French Quarter.
Steeped in good music and good food.
Absolutely, that was fun. We're both big music people, and we loved doing that, and we're really excited to be moving forward. So.
Sharon is a harpist.
She is.
With a connection.
A Celtic harpist.
Yes, with a great connection to the Gaelic genres, and I share that connection.
Knows that stuff way better than me. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, is very well versed in a lot of traditional music, especially the Gaelic ones, and yeah.
And she's
I ask her about that stuff when I have questions.
And she's beautiful.
Oh, absolutely.
And she's funny.
Absolutely.
You done all right for yourself, Matt.
Thank you.
And thanks for making me a part of that.
My pleasure. Let's hope she doesn't get wise too fast. And
Hey, fake it till you make it.
Right?
I think that was a digression worth having.
Thank you. I think so too.
Well, shall we move on?
Yes.
All right, man. So where we left off in history was we did an episode on the Middle Ages music.
Right.
2 of them, actually.
Because the Middle Ages was a long time. So we kind of did 2.
And so the first one was based on monophony, and the second one was based on polyphony.
Which sounds like a logical place for us. That sounds like me. Yeah. To have split it there.
And we're going to talk about, I would ask you to review that, but we'll talk more about that in this episode.
Okay.
So we'll just cover that as we
go.
So
we'll just move on then. Okay.
But we can get into around the time period that this Renaissance covers.
The Renaissance.
Yes, sir.
So that's the next big, and we talked about how we've covered some contextual music history in other episodes, like our episodes on blues and our episodes on women in music, etc. You could think about this as sort of the history of classical music. This is really what we're talking about with things like the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. Is we're talking about the history of musical Europe.
Yeah.
The history of
Western
European art music, which is generally thought of as quote unquote classical music, right? It all comes from Europe, and it's a big, huge tradition. There are other very big, huge traditions in the world, equally as big as this one. But because so much of the music we listen to today has ancestry in classical music, this is giving a whole lot of importance in academia. If any of you have ever taught, some of you may have taught it, but if any of you have ever been to or taken a music appreciation class in college or high school, you know that for a lot of what they do is they kind of just march you down the history of Europe.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is what we're doing here. We start with the Middle Ages generally.
Yeah.
Not because that's the beginning of European music, but because that's the beginning of European music that we know anything about for certain.
In recorded history.
Right, yeah. So everything pre-Roman Empire, we know that the Roman Empire era, we know that they had music. We just don't know very much about it. The ancient Greeks too, ancient Greece, they had music. We know they had it. It's hard to us to say anything definitive about what it was like.
I mean, all the modes were named after Greek cities and islands, so there's got to be something there.
And we can take, the Pythagorean tuning originates with Pythagoras and his, anvils, right? So we know that music was a part of their lives, but, it's hard for us to recreate or say a whole lot definitive. We have some ideas and we have some imaginings. But when you get to the Middle Ages, we can start saying some kind of definitive things because the Roman Catholic Church is recording very, very well, right? Sheet music is something that sort of evolves over the centuries, but they are making an intentional effort to preserve and record. So we go into the Middle Ages, and from the Middle Ages, which we've talked about before, the next big era is the Renaissance, the Renaissance. Right? A French word meaning renewal.
Renewal, rebirth.
Yes. This happens at about it's really a little bit before 1400. It's really in the 1300s that it starts to become a thing. And it's sort of really full-blown by 1400.
Okay.
All right. And is a musical movement by 1400. And the idea, so the word Renaissance means renewal, right? The idea began circulating first in Italy, in Florence, then in the rest of Italy, then in the rest of Europe as a whole, that there should be an effort to revive the best parts of Greek and Roman culture, to bring back their glorious past, right? Like, so, the Middle Ages was a time when, for many, many centuries, very little changed technologically, very little change in terms of scientific knowledge. Very little change in terms of art. Now, in music, things do change, but they're changing very, very slowly, right?
Over long periods of time.
Over hundreds of years, we go for a couple of hundred years singing 2 melodies at once, and then in 300 years, we might add a third one. Right, yeah. So it's changing very, very slowly. And it's looked on throughout this whole Middle Ages time, everybody's sort of looking at the ancient Romans and the ancient Greeks as the people who had sort of this quasi-utopian society, which is a weird thing to think about. We kind of live in a society today that looks forward to new technologies and new horizons and, landing on Mars one day or something. So we think the best society is going to be ahead of us, or at least we used to. I think that's changing, honestly. They were a society that said, well, the best society was the ones that fell before we came around, right? The old Greeks and Romans. So this idea comes along to bring back this, to renew, to have this rebirth, this renaissance, in which the Greek and Roman culture, the Greek and Roman philosophy, Greek and Roman art, sculpture, painting, and yes, music attempts to be revitalized. Didn't quite happen that way, but that was the idea.
I think I remember you boiling it down a while ago in one of our discussions. Life just kind of sucked during this period, so they were just looking back to better times.
Yeah. It's like, things used to be a lot better than this. was the prevailing attitude among many people in the Middle Ages. Mm-hmm. And so eventually they start doing something about it. They start thinking, we need to try to be more like them. And they start perusing the texts of Greek and Roman philosophers and scientists and things like that, trying to sort of re-establish to the best of their ability those older and, in their eyes, better societies. And this had a palpable effect on music, as you might expect. Mm-hmm. All of this meant that the church is going to lose influence for a while.
In the Middle Ages, it was a big influence because they had money to print the music and write the music.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was huge. I mean, the church was the center of life, right? Yeah. I mean, towns were literally built with the cathedral in their center. Yeah, I mean, the church was everything in the Middle Ages. In the Renaissance, we kind of have new attitudes. We're not really making art for pious reasons anymore. This is often called a humanist attitude or a humanist era, in that we are making art to express our human emotions and to extol our human virtues and to understand what it is to be one of these creatures called humans, right? These new ideas about art, they spread to music, right? And so we start rethinking what music is meant to do, and we start rethinking how music should be arranged and textured.
Okay.
That begins with plain chant.
Plain chant, huh?
You remember plain chant.
Did we talk about that and also in Middle Ages music or no?
Probably. Often referred to as Gregorian chant.
Okay, yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah. Plain chant is a more generalized term, so not just the chants written by Pope Gregory, but kind of all chants. Mm-hmm. But, the Pope Gregory ones are the most well-known and, well dispersed throughout Europe. And
so Gregorian chant is a type of plain chant?
Yes.
Okay, it's a subgenre.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pope Gregory the Second, something like that, supposedly wrote down all these chants as a sparrow who was God sat in his window and sang them to him. Mm-hmm. The more earthly explanation is he composed some, he gathered them from around Europe and whatever, compiled and what have you, and created the Gregorian chants, which is a set of specific plain chants. Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, when we're in the Renaissance, composers no longer feel the need to just sing Gregorian chants anymore. You may remember toward the end of the Middle Ages, we're kind of getting into organum, right? And Ars Nova, where we're doing kind of fun, freaky little things and setting the Gregorian chants. We're getting into this era where in the Ars Nova, people would actually set the Kyrie to a drinking song in the middle voice or something, right?
Okay, that's right,
yeah, things like that.
Sneaky.
Yeah. So they didn't always feel the need to use Gregorian chant. When they did use it, it was as a melody to be listened to. It was the music that was important, not the sacred words.
Okay, interesting.
Yes. So they would do all kinds of very interesting stuff with that. They would employ this procedure that was called paraphrasing, which was embellishing plain chant with extra notes.
Which means the opposite of what we think of today as paraphrasing, right?
Shortening, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it actually kind of means, it's actually more like digressing. If we came up with it today, we'd call it digressing.
Oh, we know about that.
Right? Because, so I'm just going to pretend I just wrote a plain chant, okay?
Okay.
But if the plain chant goes... Yeah. A paraphrase might go... Right?
Just filling in some more of the spaces with extra notes.
Just filling in some of the spaces with extra notes. And we eventually come back to the notes of the Gregorian chant, which is still considered sacred, especially if you're writing sacred music. Right? So we'll get into that in a minute. But in between those, we have a just sort of notes written in. And that sounds... Like, why would you even bother call that you're just writing something different. Why do you even call that a name? Think about the fact that these chants were sacred, right? Not just the words, but the melodies attached to them were considered sacrosanct, were considered literally sacred. For most of the Middle Ages, they were thought of as unalterable. You can alter, well, is one person singing it, or is there's a whole bunch of people singing it or what, but you can't alter what's being sung. Right? So we're altering what's being sung. We're splitting up this Gregorian chant melody and adding notes in between the notes that were there. Kind of crazy to think that that's such a revolutionary idea, but in 1400, it very much was.
Did people get in trouble for this at first, or what?
People had to be careful. The closer you were to Rome, the more you wanted to make sure you had the blessing of the church. The Renaissance begins in Italy, but it also spreads to France. And by the end of it, in the 1500s, Italy and France are the two big places that are the center of these kind of ideas and this output of art.
Wasn't it the Medicis, the Italian wealthy family, that basically bankrolled the Renaissance?
Absolutely.
At least in Italy, huh?
At least in Italy, yeah. The Medicis bankrolled a lot. They weren't just music lovers, but they did bankroll a lot of the musical Renaissance for certain.
I know a little more about the Italian Renaissance than I do the French, but I guess we're learning now, huh?
I guess we're learning. Yeah. Speaking of the French Renaissance, one of the other things that happened a lot in France during the Renaissance was homophony.
Okay.
So we had gotten to the point with organum that we were starting to see some fairly sophisticated polyphony.
Oh, hey, real quick. Is now a good time to talk about, real quick, review the monophony, polyphony?
That's a great idea.
Okay.
So monophony is a single melody in however many octaves, sung by however many people, but you're singing the same notes.
Basically unison, right? Even with with octaves.
Yeah, you can... Right?
Yeah.
That would still be monophony. It's one melody, just in two different octaves.
Got it. So that's not unison. What am I talking about?
Yeah, that is monophony. Polyphony, two or more melodies played at once. So think of a round or a fugue, classic examples. Or think of the later style organum, organa, I guess is the plural. Think of the later style organa of the late Middle Ages and the three-voice motets of the late Middle Ages, the Ars Nova, which is moving into the Renaissance. So this is kind of some pretty sophisticated polyphony.
Yeah.
Once we get into the Renaissance, the polyphony of these inner voices often become simple and would move together, which would sort of start creating sort of simple chords.
Okay.
Right? So, just the kind of basic... and then kind of thing, right? So technically, I got three voices going on here, right? But it's moving so simple that, and they're so unified in their motion that that's a D minor chord.
Yeah.
So we've got the bare bones basics of what's eventually going to become our tonal harmony system.
Okay.
So anyway, all of this leads us to one of our first big composers of the Renaissance,
Okay.
Guillaume Dufay,
Okay.
and his hymn Ave Maria Stella. So Dufay was an influential figure in Italy during the Renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
He worked in Italy where he came to know and be supported by much of the nobility there. So he was a popular guy.
Mm-hmm.
He composed this piece, Ave Maria Stella. Now, Ave Maria Stella is a Gregorian chant. It is a hymn dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Hail Mary of the Stars, right?
Stars, yeah.
Yeah, of stars. It was sung on feast days that were dedicated to Mary, of which there were many, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is in Dorian mode, and some of the stanzas are sung in Gregorian style, with paraphrasing happening. Other stanzas are paraphrased melodies of the original hymn with homophonic accompaniment.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll hear the first stanza. It will be, and this is typical of what's going on in the early Renaissance. The first thing you'll hear will be the original Gregorian chant.
Okay.
Ave Maria Stella. Right?
Nice.
Yeah. And then the second thing you'll hear will be that Gregorian chant, except paraphrased.
Okay.
So, you'll hear the first few notes of that again, but then they'll go off somewhere else. And this particular paraphrasing has a homophonic accompaniment. So you'll hear, it's all still sung. We'll get into instruments, but you'll hear them sort of creating these homophonic chords, these harmony-type chords with their voices.
All right. Well, should we give it a quick listen?
Let's do.
Okay, we'll just give a quick listen to the first and second stanzas. And
Sure,
that should give
because
us-
it's long.
That should give us an idea of everything.
Yeah.
Right? I was able to look around on YouTube and find some more contemporary recordings,
Excellent.
so they sound a little better.
Awesome.
And hopefully the people who made these videos will give us grace to use them, especially if we share the link
Yep.
on our page. Which
Sharing your link, free publicity. Please don't sue us.
We'll do that on our page, and you can go to musicstudent101.com on this episode 144, Renaissance Part 1, and watch some of these videos.
Awesome. So, here it is. Guillaume Dufay's Ave Maria Stella. Quick little thing about the name. They put the A at the end of Stella on the same note as the Ma and Marie.
Okay.
So you kind of have a Marie, right? So Ave Maria. So you have an Ave Maria.
Yeah.
Kind of sort of hidden in the melody.
Oh, that's cool.
This is nerding out on Renaissance music here, guys. Sorry, but
You'll be able to point that out in the music, maybe?
maybe, yeah, probably.
The more we talk over it, the better,
Okay,
apparently.
let's talk over it then.
Okay, so again, this is...
Guillaume Dufay, Ave Maria Stella.
And performed by the Mater Dei, Mother of God, I guess?
Yes.
Choir section leaders, which is Matt Keeney on bass, Patrick Forcell on tenor, or Forcell, Elizabeth Gearhart alto, and Stephanie Griffin soprano. First stanza.
This is the Gregorian chant, yeah.
Sounds Gregorian to me.
Oh, yeah.
You see it's in D Dorian?
Mm-hmm. This is a homophonic paraphrasing.
Okay. Or some Dorian key, I guess.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Just 4 people.
Just 4 people, yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it?
But that's the idea, right?
That's the idea. And so, if you had heard this Gregorian chant all your life, as many people in the Renaissance would have, you would have been able to tell very easily which of those notes were from the original chant and which ones were paraphrases. Right?
Wait, is this, I mean, I know this happened over a long periods of time and very slowly of evolution, but do you think ultimately the purpose of this was just to shake it up a bit, make it breathe new life into it?
I absolutely do think the idea was to shake it up, to breathe a new life, to bring new artfulness to something that had been around for many hundreds of years already at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the idea of the rebirth of the Renaissance.
So we just heard the stanzas 1 and 2, and the first one was the one man singing by himself, and then everyone joined in on the second one with more motion.
Right. Yeah.
We should say something about the historical accuracy. Back in those days, I don't think we would have had women singing.
Probably not. It would have probably been castrati. Or boys. Yeah.
Boys or castrati. Dare we explain what that is?
Suffice to say, that is one huge sacrifice to make for your musical career.
Yeah.
If you want to know any more than that, why don't you just go look it up?
Exactly. We don't see many of those today, so
no, we don't.
We're happy that we can use women in music.
Yes. You have no idea how happy.
These are people who have been castrated to slow down their hormonal maturity, I guess, to keep their voices high.
Exactly.
Men.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways. So, moving on, shall we? To the Mass.
To the Mass.
Yeah.
So, Renaissance composers. So the Mass is this big, huge thing, right? It is the center of religious life from the very beginning of the Middle Ages, time immemorial, as far as anyone in this time period is concerned. The Renaissance composers take a very relaxed attitude to the authority of the church and their insistence on the Mass being certain ways, right? The things that the church used to do, like these isorhythms, right, where everything was tightly controlled, and there were numerological aspects. Every phrase was in 3 and stuff, right? For the Trinity.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Wow. Yeah.
All of that is kind of going by the wayside in favor of things that they think sound prettier.
Okay.
They just think it sounds prettier. So things like chansons come out in France. These very simple polyphonic songs with very easy rhythms compared to the Middle Ages isorhythms, right? Instead of all this polyphonic complexity, Renaissance composers focus instead on creating very, very large works, right? So they're focused on writing a lot of music. So
large in texture or large in length or
length.
Both? Okay, length.
Both.
Okay.
Both. But definitely large in length. And the Mass, of course, is the largest thing we have around so far, right?
Yeah.
Opera has not been invented yet.
Okay, yeah.
So the Mass is the biggest thing. The largest, most important of all church services, contain many parts set to music. In the Renaissance, the old chants were abandoned in favor of new music. So we didn't just sing these same old chants in Mass anymore. Started writing new music to sing in Mass. And we still use the old texts from what we called the ordinary of the Mass, the things you sing every single day. Right? And these 5 sections, if you recall, and if you're if you are a Catholic to this day, you already know these.
Oh yeah, born and raised.
Yeah. The Kyrie.
Kyrie eleison.
Right. Yeah. The Gloria.
Gloria in excelsis.
The very one. Right. The Credo.
I don't remember that one.
the Credo is now spoken in a lot of Catholic churches.
Oh yeah, like the Nicene Creed.
Exactly.
I believe in God the Father Almighty.
Yeah. In the Renaissance, this is one of the sung parts of the Mass. Okay. Chanted parts of the Mass.
And credo is the root for credit, right?
Yeah, credo in Italian today it would translate literally as I believe.
Yeah.
In Latin it would be translated as belief. So the credo is kind of the statement of our beliefs as Roman Catholic Christians.
Got it.
Right. And then the Sanctus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then finally the Agnus Dei qui tollis peccata mundi.
They close it with the Agnus Dei,
Yeah.
which is Lamb of God.
Right.
Sanctus being holy.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So this setting of the Mass has retained its form down to the present day, like we said. And in the Renaissance, we start setting new melodies to it. So not just the old Kyries that we've been sung all through the Middle Ages, but new things, freshly composed things, very, very interesting homophonic and polyphonic things. So these Renaissance composers are not just wanting to sing the same melodies for the Mass that they've always done all the time. They're wanting to sing new things, prettier things, more extended things. They're using the Mass as a vehicle for the output of their art.
And are they still including these Gregorian melodies at this point? Or
Yes, they are.
Okay.
The Gregorian chants are usually the cantus firmus over which they are writing new polyphonic voices.
Well, that sounded smart, Matt.
Thank you.
Cantus
It took me a minute, honestly.
We talked about cantus firmus in the
In the polyphony episodes, for one thing.
But also I can't think of
In the Middle Ages?
the voice leading stuff
The voice leading stuff, yeah.
and those rules.
Yeah, the rules.
Counterpoint.
Counterpoint. There you go.
Jeez.
Yeah, we talked about the cantus firmus and counterpoint because even today we teach long-suffering music majors a little bit about how to write and counterpoint, how to start with the cantus firmus, a given melody, and write, two-voice second species, two-voice third species, graduate to 3 and 4 voices eventually, right? All that stuff from those counterpoint episodes.
Yeah.
The given melody that they were given were the Gregorian chants that had been around through all of the Middle Ages.
Got it.
Yeah.
So they're just taking these cantus firmi,
Cantus firmi.
and just adding and
Cantus firmi?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Adding to it, polyphonizing it.
Adding polyphonic voices, paraphrasing. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the texture of these Renaissance masses.
Okay.
And about Renaissance music in general. So the balance between the vertical, the harmonic, and the melodic realms in a given musical work is what we mean when we talk about texture.
That's
right?
poetic, Matt. Did you write that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, man.
Alas. But the guy who did write it is dead, so maybe I can take it.
The balance between the vertical, which is harmonic,
And the horizontal,
which is melodic,
is texture.
realms in music.
And we've already talked about 3 basic types, right? Monophonic, polyphonic, and homophonic. Starting around 1500, in what is the high Renaissance style, there emerged these masses, motets, these chansons, these French kind of pop songs, sort of. And their chief characteristic was a blend of different kinds of texture, particularly imitative counterpoint. So think about, remember our fugue was... And then the other voice comes in doing the right. That's an example of imitative fugue.
Yeah.
Of imitative polyphony. All right. So it's a balance of that and homophony. So they'll go back and forth. Now the imitative polyphony is not full blown fugue yet, where it's literally like one melody just offset in different voices. You know.
Like row your boat?
Yeah, right, kind of like that. That's actually more of a round. Fugues are even more complex than that.
Okay.
More complex versions of that. But our imitative polyphony in the Renaissance, we're going to imitate for the first few notes or so, and then kind of move on into sort of what we might think of as free counterpoint.
Okay.
Right? Just writing notes that work contrapuntally together. So in an imitative part of a mass, or in an imitation mass, as it's often called, the voice will enter with a motive, then a second voice will enter with that same motive on a different pitch, while the first voice continues with new material.
Okay.
And the second voice will also repeat, so the second voice to come in. So you've got original voice, and then it goes off into new material. Second voice comes in, same notes, different pitch level, and then goes off to its own material. Third voice comes in, and it goes off to its own material. You can have the default, if you will, was sort of 4 voices. It could get as high as 6.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There was a Renaissance composer named Luigi Ockeghem who quite famously wrote for 11.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. How's that for overcompensating?
Polyphony to me, we talked about it kind of being like the cocktail party effect, Mm-hmm. By the time you got 11 people, that's a lot of voices in your head. Huh?
That's a lot of voices. That's a lot, yeah.
Because it's not 11 people, it's 11 parts. I mean, is it 11 parts, right?
It's 11 parts.
Yeah.
I mean, in the Renaissance, it's probably also just 11 people. Good Lord, could you imagine trying to get a choir to split into 11 different... But yeah, it's 11 individual melodies. It was a weird guy, Ockeghem. He was kind of the Renaissance mystic.
Probably of the
fascinating
devil.
Character.
Made a deal with the devil.
Well, he considered himself to be very pious.
Okay.
I mean, who knows?
A lot of people consider themselves to be very pious.
A lot of people in Italy at the time said so.
Fair enough. I'll get off his case. You can be weird.
Yeah. So, we have this imitation, which is a big characteristic of these Renaissance masses, this high Renaissance style. High Renaissance meaning sacred Renaissance, right? Artful Renaissance. There's the imitation, and then there's homophony.
Okay.
Which is, again, just using voices to create rich sort of chordal qualities, chordal sonorities out of these polyphonic lines. Things that we would think of as sounding like chords today.
Yeah.
Or at least as thinking today of a choir singing in harmony.
So chord structures are starting to take shape.
Yeah, because, if you've listened to our 3-part epic on the rules of counterpoint that we did a few years ago, you'll know that those rules are very, very complex.
Yes.
So, when you have rules that complex and only 12 notes to work with, you start noticing the same combinations popping up often, right? There's that old, A, C, E thing again, right? Those notes are consonant together. They work. We didn't break any rules, so we kind of keep at it, right?
Yeah.
And it's later that we start naming that. We'll start naming it A minor later, with the theories of Riemann.
Rameau or no?
Rameau too.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll start kind of naming those things and thinking of music more vertically. But here we're still thinking of it horizontally, even though it's starting to sound very harmonious to us, right? Further evidence that the root of all chords is counterpoint, that this all came out of counterpoint, right?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Other high Renaissance characteristics, you'll hear a cappella performance, someone singing alone, right? The tempo and dynamics typically don't change very much. The rhythm is very, very fluid. And this is something that you can attribute to a lot. Most Renaissance music is that it's not really very rhythmically oriented. There's not a really definable beat. It's all very smooth and very flowing kind of music.
Yeah, and one of the examples we're going to listen to, one of the choir people was directing, and I was trying to count what his conducting was, and I could. I mean, it seemed like there was just moving around. It wasn't all just in 4 or all in 3. It seems like like you're saying, it's fluid. It's changing different time signatures. If you want to go and analyze them in terms of time signatures. Yeah,
the idea of 4 and 3 is just kind of becoming a thing, right? And there's not really a such thing as a downbeat just yet. Right. So it's you're not going to hear that super well. Definitely not like you heard it in the isorhythmic passages in the Middle Ages. Right.
Yeah. And what else? These are characteristics of Renaissance music. Right?
Melodies are rarely ever particularly high or low. Right. People don't go very to the very tops or the very bottoms of their ranges.
Kind of even keeled.
I
remember before asking you if you thought that this, because this is the kind of thing you used in prayer, if it adds to the trancy if it aged to the prayer or the meditation aspect of prayer and the kind of tranciness.
I think it probably does.
But then you said also that not just church music was doing this kind of stuff, right?
Not just church music was doing this. No, every other things were too. But I think of the Renaissance as a kind of meditative, artful, wanting to write something beautiful kind of time.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of like nowadays they say, if you want to write a hit song, don't sing too high or too low, right?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, think about that. Yeah, in the Renaissance, I think the aesthetic they were going for was this kind of very pleasant, beautiful sound. Yeah, and creating that beautiful sound was really kind of more important to them than making sure the sacred religious words, religious text was clearly understandable, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, which will get some people in trouble. We're probably coming up on that.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So anyway, it's time to listen to something, right?
Oh, what are we going to listen to?
Well, so this is Josquin Prez, who is probably the most famous composer of the Renaissance. Most music people, if they can name a Renaissance composer at all, the one that they can probably name is Josquin Prez.
Is this kind of getting into the mid-Renaissance?
Yes.
I'm seeing where he was born 1450
50.
and died 1521.
Right, yeah.
That's a good long life for somebody back then.
Yeah, no kidding. 71?
Yeah.
Yeah, not bad.
We digress, though.
We digress, yeah. He is one of the most famous Renaissance composers, wrote 18 different settings of the Mass. Remember that 5-part Mass thing? Mm-hmm. He wrote all 5 of those in 18 different Masses.
Wow.
This is one of them. The Pangelingua Mass takes as its cantus firmus a old Gregorian chant that was in Phrygian mode.
Nice.
Whose opening words were Pange Lingua. And that has something to do with the tongue.
Sing my tongue?
Something like that, yeah. Or yeah, something like that. And then it goes, Pange Lingua, right? Mm-hmm. And Dona Supana, right? And then he paraphrases off of that. But every movement of this Mass, it takes that Gregorian chant as its cantus firmus. Mm-hmm. Now, they don't sing the words Pange Lingua. They're singing the words of the Kyrie and the words of the Gloria, et cetera, et cetera.
Uh-huh.
But this old Gregorian chant, this is what people would mean when they would say, the Pange Lingua Mass, or what's another good example now?
So the Pange Lingua was one of his 18 masses? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yes. The one in which he took this Gregorian chant in Phrygian mode. And because he keeps at least the Kyrie in Phrygian mode, it has this really, really chilling kind of Phrygian quality to it, right? Sounds a lot different than a lot of the other ones. So fascinating Mass. It's kind of one of my favorites.
Yeah, nice.
The first thing you'll hear is the first line of that Mass. And it's sung to sort of clue people in on where he got this material, I guess, for this cantus firmi. And then you'll hear these imitations where everybody goes, this is in the Kyrie, by the way, the first part of the Mass. Mm-hmm. And it goes, Kyrie, just that half step up, this in Phrygian mode. Yeah. And then then go on and sing polyphonically. And then someone else comes in and sings that, Kyrie, and then someone else, right? And it's not a full-blown fugue. Once you've come in with that, you're kind of going off on your own, right? You're not following directly behind the original voice.
It's not a copy and paste job.
Right,
Yeah.
It's not a copy and paste job. We call those points of imitation, though, when the voice enters singing something that another voice had previously sung. Mm-hmm. And this motive that they're singing is a paraphrase of the original Kyrie playing chant, which begins on this 1 flat 2 1 note. Pangeling, right? Uh-huh. Yeah. So, but the original Gregorian chant did not sing Kyrie eleison, right? It's saying Pange Lingua, something, 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 something.
Okay.
That's why it's called the Pange Lingua chant.
During the Kyrie, though, huh?
Yeah, but when we play the Kyrie, we're singing the first 3 notes of that, but we're singing Kyrie.
Yeah, okay.
And then
okay.
and then imitating it.
I get it.
Yeah. So Kyrie-1 has a point of imitation. The Christe section has 2 points, 2 different points of imitation, where I believe they're going back to singing like the second and third notes of the original chant, and then the third and fourth notes of the original chant, and then the second Kyrie has yet its own with new music, followed by free material, not derived from the plain chant at all.
Interesting. So there's 2 Kyries in a row before you go to the Gloria?
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want to hear the Kyrie? Maybe we could skip the Gloria. I don't know.
Well, we can't listen to the whole thing, right? So maybe if we just listen to the one as the Kyrie.
Let's just listen to the Kyrie. If I have to pick one, let's listen to the Kyrie.
Okay.
So what you'll hear is a short passage of imitative polyphony in which the first 3 notes of the original Gregorian chant, Pange lingua, right? Pange is going to be sung as Kyrie, Kyrie, and it's that 1 flat 2 1 of the original Phrygian mode, right? So that is going to be our point of imitation, which means a second voice is going to come in, sing those same 3 notes, Kyrie, and then a third voice, and then a fourth voice.
Okay.
And then after they've all come in, having sung those 3 notes, they're going to continue on sort of free-form counterpoint, right?
Yeah.
It's not a pure fugue where they're literally going to stick with the original melody every note.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to go on after that. But you're going to hear those points of imitation, and then they're going to continue on through free counterpoint to the end of the first Kyrie. Then we move to the first Kyrie eleison, and then we move to Christe eleison. Also has a point of imitation, right? And then the second Kyrie, yet a new point of imitation. All of these following the note from those original notes of the original Gregorian chant called Pange lingua.
Right. Which we won't hear in this recording.
But you can find that. I mean, you type in Pange lingua, you're going to hear it all over the place.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, I thought so, but I had a hard time finding one, you know what I mean? This will just be kind of coming in on the Kyrie part.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so here we go.
This is Josquin de Prez, Pange lingua mass.
The Kyrie, sang by Siglo de Oro. Sign of gold? Siglo de Oro?
Yeah.
Okay.
Point 2.
Point 2. That's
Point 3.
okay. Yeah, in the soprano.
Now the bass is going to be point 4. Hear that?
Yep, I heard it.
Now we're in free counterpoint.
Yeah.
And we're singing Kyrie eleison, right? Which is the text.
Uh-huh.
But it's not the old Kyrie that we sang in the Middle Ages. Listen to this beautiful 4-voice. Right?
What a chord.
Yeah. And then Christe. New point of imitation.
Okay. And that was 1 and 2. 1 and 2 happened pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And there's number 3.
There's 3.
In the tenors, maybe?
Yep. And the bass is probably last.
Where are you?
Come on. There he is.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a long way around. So anyway, you get the idea.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, go check out that mass. It is gorgeous. It is one of my favorites.
That's that cocktail party effect I'm talking about.
That is one of the most beautiful ways to sing Kyrie eleison I've ever heard.
No kidding. So that's the first part of his mass.
Yeah, is the Kyrie. And then he goes on, and there's a Gloria, of course, which has a lot of homophony, along with the same kind of polyphony we just heard. Then there'll be a Credo, and then there'll be a Sanctus, and an Agnus Dei, all of it based off a paraphrased version of this Gregorian chant that was Pange Lingua.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. And that's the kind of thing they did in the Renaissance. The Renaissance composers did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was beautiful.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Renaissance composers, you will recall, were inspired by Roman and Greek civilizations.
Yeah.
And these civilizations felt that music was capable of arousing the emotions. In fact, they kind of considered that its primary purpose.
I tend to agree.
Oh, yeah. With this inspiration, they realized that it was not just the words that could arouse us to piety or spirituality or love or whatever else, but also the music, the melodies themselves that were capable of expressing emotion. This sounds like a kind of a duh sitting here in the 21st century, right? But it was a little bit of a revelation for 15th century Europe. So out of this revelation, two important developments happen. And these developments happen because they are trying to wrap their brains around how do we use music to express the feelings in the words, and so they come up with these things like declamation, which is setting words to rhythms and or melodies that approximate normal speech.
Okay.
Right? So the techniques arouse out of the desire for the words to be clearly heard, right?
By imitating the patterns of vocal speech patterns?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
This is where the idea of recitative in aria comes from, right? And for the same reason. We want the music to be clearly heard, so we're going to declaim. So we're going to chant in a way like this so that you understand what I am saying, right? They did that in the Middle Ages too, but it becomes part of their polyphony in the Renaissance. Right? And the other big one, and this is a really big one, is word painting.
Matt, this is your favorite, isn't it?
Yeah, I love this. He knows I hate this. Is what
we'll get to that rant in just a little bit.
We'll get to that
Tell us
rant.
what it is.
That rant is coming up, man. No, but I am not a Renaissance composer. In the Renaissance composer, they thought this was just the highest form of musical art possible. I'm being sarcastic already. Getting all edgy already. It is the process of matching musical characteristic to the dialectical meaning of the word. For example, if I say the word fly, I might sing that on a high note, put a little trill on it even. If I say the word glitter, I might trill.
Yeah, that's interesting.
If I sing running down the main, I might sing that in a downward run, running down the main. Which Thomas Wilkes actually does.
He does a lot of that stuff, doesn't he?
Yeah. So basically, it's a great, I see what you did there, right? Because so we're trying to match the musical goings-ons with the meaning of the words. And by meaning, I mean the very simple, like sing a low note on the word low, right? I had a student once, and he put this on a test. He said that an example of word painting would be the word low in Garth Brooks' Friends in Low Places.
Okay.
Because I got friends in low places. Saying a low note on the word low.
Well done.
Very good, not a particularly chronologically accurate, but a great example of the idea. Yeah.
And you think that's just a little contrived, huh?
I think it's very well. Is that whole "I see what you did there," right? And there are modern day composers who try to get you to do stuff like this, and I kind of pick beef. I'm not a big word painting person. Not in this very very simple idea of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just my opinion. Which you get for free on this podcast.
I kind of like it.
I knew it. I knew it.
You know a word painting fan when you see one.
You traitor, you.
Oh man, I'm just not sophisticated enough.
So anyway, this happened. This would eventually happen in English music in something we call the English madrigal, which is something that a lot of people associate with the Renaissance. Things like Fair Phyllis, Fair Phyllis I saw sitting up and down, but before that, it was Italian.
Yeah.
It was the Italian madrigal, and that's always hard for English-speaking students to catch the word painting unless they've just studied it because, different language, right? And also, the French got in on it. Mm-hmm. So this next thing that we're going to hear is, again, Josquin de Prez.
Okay.
But this is not sacred music like his mass was. That is music for the church, right? Mm-hmm. This is a chanson.
Which is considered secular.
Secular, non-church music, not for the church, something to sing out in everyday life for entertainment and enjoyment. Chanson is French for song-ish. Yeah. So this particular one, Mille Regrets, 1,000 Sorrows.
1,000 Sorrows.
Yeah. This is a lover's lament at leaving his beloved. This is an example of Renaissance era romanticism, which usually involves somebody being so heartsick that they literally die. Right? And it's usually some guy, and he's usually in love with some woman who is above his station. And so she doesn't even know he exists. And he's so torn up by this unbearable situation that he's literally just going to physically die. And so...
I think you likened it to old school country music.
Yeah. Serious. Yeah.
My dog
like
died.
That.
My truck broke down.
Yeah.
My woman left me.
Yeah.
Woe is me.
Yeah, exactly. Woe is me. Yeah. It's a lover's lament. In this particular one, he has left his beloved. Who knows why? Mm-hmm. The mood of the words is captured by these sober harmonies, downward melodies, slow rhythms. Particularly effective, two homophonic points. Je suis grand Dieu. My new wife is going to cringe at my French. I feel such sorrow. And brief mais je définis. My days are numbered.
Nice.
Told you it's going to die.
Yeah, no kidding.
Which ends the chanson. So much more expressive. If you remember the Quantum Moi, which was sort of the Ars Nova thing from the Middle Ages.
Part 2, I think.
Yeah, this is much more expressive. It's not structured like that, right? It's not very rigidly structured. What this is expressive and emotional and oppressing. Just wait till you hear this.
Oh, yeah. Shall we?
Yes.
Okay. This is Mille Regrets, Josquin de Prez, and this is by Profeti della Quinta with Giovanna Bavaria, Doran Schiffler, Jacob Lawrence, and Elam Rotem, 4-part. Here we go.
Hear how low and somber that.
Man. These guys sound so great. I don't even want to talk over it.
I know, right?
But we should.
This is some beautiful. The whole Renaissance is just beautiful like this to me.
I heard that.
There's our point.
Yeah.
I feel such sorrow.
Yeah.
Hear the emotional swell?
Yeah. Probably good, huh?
Probably good, yeah.
Darn. Those guys are amazing. There's just 4 people.
Yeah.
How well their voices blend. I'm listening more to the music than what's really going, like the sound of it than what's really going on.
I mean, Josquin is a genius. He's a brilliant composer. He's ranks right up there with Bach or Beethoven or anyone else. He's just from a slightly earlier time.
Yeah, man. Anyone that knows French would have probably heard that word painting going on.
Probably, yeah. I don't speak nearly a word of French, so.
Yeah, me neither. But I heard the movement.
Yeah.
And I heard the passion. I heard the emotion.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This is what the Renaissance is about. Beauty, passion, emotion, moving. It's not meant to be only pious the way the Middle Ages is.
Right.
Right. And so, it is hearkening back to what they believed the Greeks and Romans felt about these things.
So are they hearkening back to the pre-Middle Ages music?
Yes.
Is that okay? Okay.
Pre-fall of the Roman Empire.
Got it.
And they did have writings and things going on that helps them sort of get a grip on what they think that might have been like in their attempt to renew, and rebirth. They're not just completely flying blind.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is to take that as inspiration. Things that Plato said about music stirring the passions, and Pythagoras' anvils and things like that. It's sort of where they're getting their ideas from about more emotion, less churchiness all the time, right?
And speaking of imitation being the highest form of flattery, I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of bands today are doing throwbacks to the 80s sounds and the 90s sounds.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this happens way quicker these days.
Now everything happens way quicker, but we still kind of go through the same cycles. Absolutely. We kind of go through the same cycles of intellectually originated, highly structured music and emotional, free-flowing music.
Yeah.
You think of how highly structured the 80s music was.
Yeah.
And how tightly controlled the sound was.
Yeah.
Compared to the 90s.
Right.
But then you think about how tightly structured the music of the teens was. How tightly controlled the sound was.
Yeah.
We're probably moving into a new era again pretty soon.
And going back to the 60s, how raw everything was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Punk rock.
Yeah.
Pretty structured, but pretty raw.
Yeah. Everything moves faster in pop music, and everything moves faster in modern times. So
that covered pretty much up to the early and mid Renaissance.
That's about the mid. Yeah, that's early to mid, and that's sacred music ish.
And you think we have enough to fill a whole episode on the late Renaissance?
You betcha.
I bet we do. Well, you want to give a quick recap before we get out of here?
Yeah, quick recap. So the Renaissance, we move away from the piety of the Middle Ages into new ideas. And these ideas are centered around emotional expression and aesthetic beauty. And to accomplish this, we create sophisticated forms of polyphony, such as points of imitation, in which notes are imitated as voices enter. And we also have homophony for the first time. Notes of individual counterpoint lines coming together to form what could reasonably be called chords. So we have that harmony sound.
Yeah.
Really, it's really the beginning of that. Really the beginning of that. And we can't contrast that with polyphony, with counterpoint.
Yeah.
Right?
Because what I was hearing in Josquin's music was chords. I was hearing chords. They just didn't call it that.
They just didn't call it that, right? Yeah. And we have listened to a lot of sacred music by people like Guillaume Dufay. His hymn Ave Maria Stella, which is a paraphrased hymn. He would take as his basis a Gregorian chant, and then sing a few notes of it, and then kind of go off on his own.
Yeah.
Right, and then create polyphony off, the going off on his own part. Right, and then come back. This also happened in masses. For example, Josquin de Prez' Pange Lingua Mass, in which we take the Gregorian chant called Pange Lingua, use it as the cantus firmus for 5 movements of a mass. Right, very, very exciting. Right, very difficult, very ingenious. And we also talked just a little bit about secular music not for the church. For example, the French chanson, songs for just everyday walking around pleasure, and the romanticism of tormented beloved people, like in Dupray's Mille Regrets.
And this wasn't the first time secular music reared its head, right? There's like the troubadours and the mind singers of the Middle Ages were still secular, right?
It is reasonable to presume that all throughout the Middle Ages there was secular music. We just don't know anything about it because those people didn't have the education to write it down. It was only with Yeah, you mentioned the troubadours and trouvères and minnesingers of the late Middle Ages. These people were actually nobles. Ergo, they were educated.
Yeah.
Ergo, they could write down what they were doing.
Yeah.
That's the first time we really have a good record. It's reasonable to presume there was secular music all through the Middle Ages.
Dr. Jeremy could stick his neck out and theorize or wonder if music was actually secular before there was church music.
Oh, yes.
Because you had music before church, I think. Well,
oh, yes. Well, nothing is...
we just don't know about it.
Nothing really comes out of the sun. Everything is inspired by something, right?
Yeah.
I would think honestly that a lot of church music probably, we're sort of doubting Pope Gregory's story here. He claims that God came down as a sparrow and sang it all to him. Mm-hmm. But I would imagine that the Gregorian chants themselves were born out of a kind of folk melody tradition that's just lost to history now.
Yeah. We got our theories. We can speculate.
Hey, I can speculate. It's what they pay me to do.
It's informed speculation.
Exactly.
But continue. I'm sorry.
That's pretty much it. Actually, that's the mid to the early to mid Renaissance in a very brief nutshell.
And the high Renaissance style.
The high Renaissance style is just all those things we're talking about: imitative, counterpoint, mixed with homophony.
And then we talked about the characteristics you might hear in Renaissance style.
Yeah,
music.
well, the characteristic textures: monophony, homophony, polyphony. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and you might also hear people singing a cappella, right? Mm-hmm. You will hear tempo and rhythm being not a really big important feature of this music. You will hear the vocal ranges not go particularly high or low for their range.
Mm-hmm. If you guys listen to the intro and outro music, it's just going to be like a probably a harmonium or something like that, or a hurdy-gurdy.
Nice.
But I didn't have a choir that I could get.
Hey, what are you going to do?
So please, these are melodies based on those melodies and harmonies. So
right.
Hope you enjoy that. Trying to be accurate, but you can only be so accurate with the resources we have.
We are limited by copyright, basically. Please, nobody sue us.
Yeah, please. But anyways, we hope you guys enjoyed that. Another history episode, and there'll be plenty more to come.
I have to talk about the mid to late Renaissance at some point. That's a fascinating little historical period.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I really love French Renaissance music.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
It's just beautiful, magical, strange.
Hope we expose you to something new here.
Yeah.
All right, see you next time.
See you next time.
We hope you enjoyed that discussion. Stay tuned for more like it. If you wish to support us, go to the donate page on our website, musicstudent101.com. Or you can help others find us by reviewing, subscribing, and sharing. And for questions or comments, write to us at info@musicstudent101.com.